Well, good afternoon, humans and non-humans. Welcome to another experimental video of mine. Today, I've been wanting to do something that, while I may be a bit late to the party to, I still think it would be interesting to talk about, especially since I can't see anyone talking about this particular topic. That's right, I'm doing an Iceberg video today. And of course, with a new update coming to Don't Starve Together the day after writing the script, and with the seeming lack of people covering something like this, I thought it would be fun to do a video on this. For the purpose of this video, I've opted to make my own iceberg chart instead of using one already made. There was a lot of information I wanted to include in an iceberg that wasn't really found in many out there, and I also wanted to avoid using meme entries to fill up space. I'm gonna skip the whole introduction because I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with iceberg charts at this point. So with that all the way, why don't we turn the lever of that suspicious machine and dive into the constant. Them, or they, are a mysterious force that pulls the strings behind everything in the constant. We don't know what they look like, or if they have a physical appearance, or if they're multiple entities or just one, though we do know that the nightmare creatures are not them. Weber's Skull is an item that can be dropped from spiders in the Reign of Giants DLC for the original Don't Starve. By burying this in a grave, Weber will emerge from it and be unlocked. This is the only case of a survivor that is confirmed dead when Wilson comes along, though the others are most likely also dead by that time as well. Remember when I mentioned these things a while back? The nightmare creatures are shadowy beings that appear as a player's sanity drops. However, the only two hostile ones are crawling horrors and terror beaks, which can be seen by other players, implying they aren't hallucinations but actual beings, throwing it into question whether sanity relates to the player's sanity or something else. After being trapped in the Constant, it's well known that Maxwell lured many people into the Constant through various means, usually offering something. Some exceptions to this, however, are Wilbur, Wilba, Wormwood, Wartox, and Wart, who existed previously in the Constant. The Codex Umbra is a book Maxwell discovered sometime around faking his death as William Carter. The book grants users the ability to summon shadow creatures, and it was used for Maxwell's magic shows. During the final show, the Codex dragged both Maxwell and Charlie into the Constant in a catastrophe. Starting in 2019, Clay began to work on character updates to all characters, starting with Winona. This also came alongside many new paid characters being released around the same time frame. Adventure Mode is a separate mode accessed in the original Don't Starve through the Adventure Portal. In it, you go through a series of challenges where you have to find pieces of a machine to go to the next chapter. This mode leads to the canon ending, where Wilson takes the Nightmare Throne and Maxwell is freed. The Developer Graveyard is a rare set piece that can sometimes generate in a world. The set piece is a large square area with different gravestones which have text referring to the Don't Starve development team. If you dig up every grave, a ghost will spawn from each one in the set piece. The stagehand is a strange entity that can be happened across in the world. When it is night, it will crawl towards the player making a music box noise, and stop when it comes into light. Smashing it with a hammer for long enough can cause it to drop an end table blueprint. It is speculated that the show hand is used by Charlie to spy on the survivors. And with that, our short stay in Tier 1 is over. Now we delve into the deeper layers, where more unknown content is found. When a player is revived or killed by means either unknown to the game or via cheats, it will display a message with the cause being shenanigans. The jury-rigged portal is a structure built by Maxwell and Wilson after Charlie took the Nightmare Throne, and served as the spawn point for players before a new Reign update. After the portal was built, it was taken over by Charlie and turned into the florid postern. The Seaworthy and Skyworthy are two structures that are methods of travel between the DLC worlds. This can allow a player to have access to the Reign of Giants content, Shipwreck content, and Hamlet content in one save file. The Cyclone and Metheus puzzles were two connected ARGs that acted as a method of obtaining in-game items and gave a lot more lore to the game. Cyclone was a comic showing the creation of the florid postern, while the Metheus puzzle gave more insight into the Ancients, who will be mentioned later on the Iceberg. Wartox was originally a monster character to be in the original Don't Starve, but went unused. Eventually, he was reused in Don't Starve Together as a paid character. As the title suggests, Winona and Charlie are siblings canonically. Winona even directly mentions Charlie when in the dark. In the trailer for A New Reign, Charlie can be seen freeing Wilson from the Nightmare Throne, before promptly taking his power and claiming the throne for herself. In Don't Starve Together, she is the new ruler of the Constant. Oh boy. The Ancients were a race of arthropods/crustaceans that predated Maxwell's control of the Constant, who lived in the caves. They eventually disappeared in one massive event that we'll talk about later. And now, the only indication that they ever existed is the ruins they left behind. The Ancient Gateway is a structure located in the ruins of the Ancients, which when activated with the Ancient Key can be used to summon the Fuel Weaver boss, and it is also the portal that sends the survivors to the Forge and the Gorge event. It is also related to the incident mentioned in the previous entry. Starting with the Return of Them updates, which introduced sea travel to Don't Starve Together, we began to get content that indicated that the moon was a being in itself. And as indicated by its effect on the Constant through full moons and a piece of it falling to the ground, it severely messed with the Constant, making it potentially an opposing force to them. The moon being alive is all but confirmed in the Storm trailer, as we see its true form near the end. In pre-release versions of Don't Starve, instead of being a top hat, the magic icon was a pentagram. This was changed to avoid religious connotations. After being teleported into the Constant with Maxwell, Charlie, through some unknown process, partly became a nightmare creature, resulting in the Gru, or the thing that attacks you when you're in the dark. Before the Reap What You Sow update, disease was a mechanic that could randomly occur to crops that would cause them to stop producing altogether. There was also an unused diseased grassy gecko that went unused even back when this was still a thing. It was removed due to not adding much to the game. Rune rushing is a tactic used by some Don't Starve players to get a head start with progression in the game by immediately going for a base in the ruins. This is typically done and advocated for by experienced players, and can be contentious in some cases. Remember Weber's skull? Well, there exist skull prides for every character in the game that go unused, maybe indicating that originally every character was supposed to be unlocked via bearing their skull. For some reason in 2021, there were skull sprites added for the newly added characters, and Maxwell as well. It can be inferred that WX78 was created by Wagstaff due to the similarity to the model name of the radios made by him, and their inspection quotes relating to Wagstaff, suggesting that WX78 is well aware of Wagstaff and does not trust him. The trade-in is a feature in Don't Starve Together, where you can trade up several cosmetics of equal value for one higher tier cosmetic. It's not known exactly who the character who owns the establishment is, though it's speculated they're the unused shopkeeper that'll be talked about later on. And with that, we are done with Tier 2, and now we descend deeper and deeper into the secrets of Don't Starve. This one's going to be good. Long pig, also known as human meat, was a cut food product in Don't Starve Together that could be dropped upon player death. It is a cooked and jerkified variant, and the few that have dialogues lines for it express disgust at it, except for Wormwood. This was probably cut due to not fitting in with the game, and not being overall that very useful, netting barely any stat gains. It is implied through interactions between Wendy and Maxwell that they are related. This goes further, as in the past, William Carter/Maxwell asked his brother about his two daughters, which seems like a good fit for Abigail and Wendy. Wilton is an unused character resembling the skeletons of previous survivors. All of its graphics, some voice lines, and portraits are still left in the files, and originally was going to be used as a second form of Woodlegs, but was too difficult to implement. There is a sentiment among some players that choosing to play as the character Wes, due to his overwhelming downsides with little upsides, can be seen as griefing via being a detriment to all the players on the server. Research points was a cut mechanic that was an early version of prototyping, where you need to turn items into research points that could be exchanged for blueprints at a science machine. William Carter is the true identity of Maxwell, revealed in the William Carter puzzles. After a failed magic career, he faked his own death to assume the identity of Maxwell the Great. The Old Bell is an item in Reign of Giants that can be crafted with Glommer's wings, dropped by killing Glommer. When used, it would spawn a giant foot at your location, which would trample anything in its path. This is not carried over to Don't Starve Together due to its potential for griefing. Another character in the original Don't Starve, which as the name suggests is the pyro from Team Fortress 2, even coming with the extinguisher as an item. This was confirmed to be only made for fun, and wasn't planned for a crossover. Another one relating to the Ancients. At one point in the Constant's history, the Ancient discovered nightmare fuel by some means. This led to a sort of revolution in their culture and society, and resulted in the creation of the Ancient Gateway, which caused them to be released into the Constant. This presumably resulted in every ancient becoming the nightmare creatures we see, as a statue of the ancients resemble the Terrorbeak and Crawling Horror. Basalt is an indestructible rock that only appears in one Reign of Giants exclusive set piece and Chapter 5 of Adventure Mode. It was originally placed around the world as placeholders for sinkholes. The Shopkeeper is an unused series of NPCs for the original Don't Starve, who would sell players items. They are cut due to not fitting in with the theme of the game, and being able to buy items broke the flow of the game. Trying to interact with them by spawning them in will simply crash it. Clients relates to the theory that the Nightmare Throne can give characters claw-like hands. However, this might just be a stylistic detail, as it's inconsistent with some characters whether they are drawn with claws or regular hands, such as Wilson. Don't Starve New Home, a mobile game still in development, was data mined a while back, revealing a plethora of cut assets from Return of Them, a lot of which make appearances on this very Iceberg. Upon reaching the edge of the map, the ocean sharply falls off into another sea. Cut content from New Home suggests originally instead this weird nightmare creature tentacle was to stop you at the edges of the world. In Don't Starve Shipwrecked, fog would simply lead you to the other edge of the world. The Ancient Archive is an area of the Lunar Grotto, containing several devices from the Ancients and a sealed portal that doesn't have a use as of yet. It appears that there was a subset of Ancients that worshipped the moon before or during the Nightmare Fuel revolution that resided here. Frogwebber is another cut character who is Weber wearing a frog. This was released to the Steam Workshop by Clay themselves, and is able to do a long jump while holding the walking cane. Long before Winona was released to Don't Starve Together, her dialogue was accidentally added into an update before being removed shortly after. This prompted mass speculation on who this character could be based on the dialogue. Fat is a sort of unused food item in the game. The only items that are listed under this tag is butter and coconuts. This could hint at there being originally a wider array of items for recipe under this tag, but they are either deemed redundant or not worth developing further. No, this does not relate to the iceberg image itself. In the files, there are quotes for an iceberg and a melted iceberg that didn't make the cut for Return of Them. Most likely they were a sea object that you would have to avoid, or potentially mine for ice while in sea during winter. Maxwell's head is an unused asset intended for interactions with him in adventure mode. Spawning him in just prompts it to say, "You forgot to set a speech. Go do it." But he does have dialogue in the game for Archipelago and Checkmate. Deadly Feast is a food item that can instantly kill most characters and put others on the verge of death. This was originally put in the game as a way to escape adventure mode before the final chapter was implemented. Warbucks was a cut character from the Hamlet DLC, present in the beta builds. He was an archaeologist that could craft special tools for the environment, but was cut due to cultural reasons and not really being that interesting to play as. He was later replaced with Wormwood. And a tier is now completed. Next, we go to the deepest layer of this entire iceberg. Starting off, Winnie, Wallace, Waverly, and Watrusha. These were all unused characters for the original Don't Starve. Many only have graphics associated with them, and very little is known about them. Winnie may have become Wigfrid later on, and Watrusha may have become Wilbur, but the other two are not very well known. Notes were an unused item in Don't Starve that could be dropped by birds, leading to a series of puzzles that led to the announcement of Don't Starve Together. The Forging universe shows us a place where pigs have created a much more advanced society in comparison to the Constant, with Lord Pugna being the leader of this band. This can vaguely be interpreted as some sort of relation to the Pig King, as he is in a similar position in the Constant. It is also to note that Lord Pugna seems to be familiar with Charlie and them, and if the survivors are defeated, he states that he intends to take the Nightmare Throne for himself. Before the moderately friendly update, instead of Spelunky pods, Spelunkies would be spawned from barrels. This would probably be a reference to Donkey Kong, but was changed to make them fit more into the world. A Maxwell quote related to the Mirms states that he did not create them, implying they came from somewhere else. Eventually, during the Gorge event, it was revealed that Mirms were the remnants of a civilization cursed by a hungry maw in the sky. This eventually caused them to become Mirms and reduce their minds, turning them into primitive beings that migrated to the Constant. Before the early access period of the Hamlet DLC, Clay began accepting applications to a closed beta of the DLC to gain feedback. I was personally a part of this beta and got to play an early build of it. Bonfires are an early version of pig heads that would occasionally spawn pigs. You could also cook food at it, despite it being lit or not. Mod Player is a placeholder character in the game's files, probably to be a template for characters and a failsafe for characters with no graphics. The Slip and Slip Store are unused enemies for Hamlet, who could swap between a smaller and larger form. Otherwise, not much is known about how they functioned. Tree clumps were an unused structure similar to basalt, being completely indestructible. These probably were unused for very obvious reasons. Having a clump of trees that only acted as a permanent obstacle makes no sense for the gameplay or in-universe. Goals were a feature that was cut very early on in the development of Don't Starve. This was originally meant to direct players towards what they were supposed to be doing during playtesting, due to a large amount of players becoming lost and confused on what to do. However, this led to people becoming reliant on the game telling them what to do, and when the goals ended, the players lost interest. In the end, Clay opted to guide players through the crafting UI you see nowadays. While palm trees have a tree guard variant in Shipwrecked, the jungle trees were originally going to have their own tree guard variant as well. There's also concept art for a mangrove tree guard. The Friend O-Matic was an unused structure that was replaced with the Lazy Deserter. It could be used to teleport players near each other through some means, as indicated through examination quotes. There's a variant with a regular tree to the right and a blue mushroom tree, probably corresponding to the surface and the caves. The Skull Chest is an unused chest type that functions alike to a normal chest, and it was used in the William Carter puzzles, but otherwise it goes unused. The Wargfant is a cut enemy in the New Home files. They appear to be a mix of koalefants and vargs, probably meant to be another hunting surprise that could potentially attack the player. The Mawulf is an owl moth meant to appear in the Lunar Grotto found in the New Home files. Honestly, I wish this ended up being added in a game, and not because I'm completely biased towards Moth whatsoever. Piglets are unused NPCs in the Hamlet DLC, one of them being Wilba herself. They might have gone unused to prevent depicting them dying in some capacity. The Jyawlin, I think that's how it's pronounced, is an unused NPC found within the files in New Home, wielding a serrated saw thing. This might have been a Halloween exclusive enemy, but might have been cut due to being a bit extreme for the game, or just not fitting in functionally. Stem cells are an inventory added into Don't Starve Together, but then removed. These might have been an item that could regenerate health or be an ingredient to a health recovery item. I probably don't need to explain why this would be removed. And finally, for the last entry, it is speculated that the Fuel Weaver may very well be the ancient king that surrendered to them after the disaster incurred by the Gateway. The Fuel Weaver's head shape vaguely resembles that of the ancient king, and talks about his world being threadbare, his city being in tatters, and the fall of the ancients. The ancient gateway being able to awaken the full consciousness of the Fuel Weaver may be a result of his desire to make sure that the accident never repeats again. If he defeats the survivors, he will turn off the gateway, talking about how he wishes to turn back what he incurred. And that's the Iceberg. I want to leave off on a substantial note, so I hope I pulled that off well. Now, I most certainly forgot some things in the making of this video, or I didn't explain some things correctly. If you notice something or want to bring up something that wasn't presented in this Iceberg, feel free to comment below. I may make a follow-up and update this chart, and maybe explain some entries that I decided to scrap for this Iceberg and why. And for myself, if this video was enjoyable or if there's some criticism you'd like to give, I'd be happy to see it. And if you would like to support my artistic ventures, I post art to my Twitter account. And if you would want to support my general endeavors, I have a Ko-fi which you can donate to if you so wish to. But for now, that is the video. I wish you safety until we meet again.